In the face of propaganda, misinformation, and lies, how do you make sense of things? I hold the concept of institutional corruption near. Institutional corruption is when an organization or institution strays from its original purpose, strays from its meaning, strays from its mission. This normally happens over time and is a result of insider and special interests, just in there tinkering away, using the system to benefit themselves. Sort of a natural thing that people do. And some of our systems and institutions are very old at this point and have been tinkered with for a very long time. Purposefully. When you look at something like healthcare, which is no longer really focused on optimizing health, but is focused on the medicine approach, treating things, injecting things, not prevention, not how do we create healthy humans? How do people live a healthy, optimal lifestyle? Which you would think would be the mission of healthcare. Just like you would think the mission of mental health would be mental health, not just to affirm somebody's crazy. But in a lot of cases today, the mental health professional has to affirm somebody's crazy if it's sort of a protected class, essentially, these days. I mean, if somebody is traumatized and has been abused, for instance, but is coping with this by, changing their identity, by doing something dramatic, in a lot of cases, a psychologist has to affirm that, no matter what. Wow. And this is, and maybe that was sold as being something kind, loving, or whatever. I'm getting off track, but, because I guess the point I could say is that institutional corruption is everywhere today. All of our systems have and institutions have strayed away from their original purpose, their original mission. Education no longer educates, it largely indoctrinates, and it has become a credentialism factory, But it doesn't necessarily, in fact, less and less so, teaches people how to think, really imparts, useful knowledge upon them. It teaches them to become a part of the status quo, and that's one of the things I think academia is most guilty of, is that it seems to be the thing that prepares people to sell out to the institutionally corrupt systems. Now, institutional corrupt systems, here's the thing about institutional corruption, is that it becomes normalized. A system of ethics, rules, and laws grows up to support it, which I think is hard for people to wrap their heads around, because most people think that rules, ethics, and laws are there to support goodness of some sort, right? Well, actually, if you look at sort of the Beltway bandit model, and I call Beltway bandits because there are a lot of contractors and consultants and lobbyists and, bureaucrats who benefit from manipulating these systems, from transferring taxpayer wealth, the largesse, into their pockets. And, people have become really, really, really good at that. I mean, there's a reason why DC is one of the most opulent, DC and the surrounding areas is so opulent. These people, these are the middlemen. They are the ones who have perfected the grift, if you think about it. And most of the rules, regulation, laws, and things there that are there that you think are there to protect you, protect the taxpayer, to do the right thing, to be responsible, are not there for those reasons. They are there to, well, further the opulence of inside the Beltway and other places too. I mean, it's while it may not be the big club that George Carlin talked about that we're not in, it's another club. And anyway, so many of our institutions have become institutionally corrupt. And what are the two main, how do you know something's become institutionally corrupt? Well, it strays from its mission, its original purpose, and the public either outright distrusts the organization or institution, or perceives reasons to distrust it. So, it's not, for instance, that, it's not the fault of the people who are distrusting whatever it is, the healthcare mandates or whatever it is. It's actually the fault of the institutions. And I didn't like that during COVID and during so many things today. We blame the people who are, just asking questions, just thinking for themselves, and not saying, hey, if there's a problem with trust here in the public, it's obviously because of the institutions themselves. The media is very, very much like that. It blames conspiracy theorists and crazy. No, you guys have now have this track record of lying to people, Anyway, I'm getting off of track here because obviously people, that's the one thing about institutional corruption that I have observed, is that people go to great lengths to protect it and preserve it, especially those benefiting from it. Well, particularly those benefiting from it. So you have public distrust and a straying from original mission and purpose. Now, I challenge you, if you go around and you actually look at any of our institutions, healthcare, defense, education, finance, you go around and you look at these things, you will realize that, hey, there's actually a lot of these systems that seem to benefit the few over the many, that seem to further a status quo, a business as usual that is suboptimal, let's just say, And anyway, the other way that I make sense of things today is Sapola's 5 basic laws of human stupidity. Everywhere, at all times, just about everyone underestimates how many stupid people are in circulation. Stupid people, and Sapola believed more sort of in the Forrest Gump version of stupidity, in that stupid is as stupid does. Has nothing to do with IQ or credential. In fact, he even said that stupidity is independent of any other characteristic of that person. Education level, IQ, title, whatever. And that's something important, because I think there are a lot of people who believe, I call it the myth of expertise. We don't have a lot of experts in our country, and we have very few generalists who can understand how things are all interplaying. We do have experts in small areas, but their knowledge begins to fade pretty quick as they get beyond their little silo, or whatever you want to call it. We have very few people who are out there comprehending how, finance affects healthcare affects, how all of these things are influencing each other, and how it's influencing the individual, coming all the way down to the individual. And so, because most of the people who are in positions today have become, well, they're indoctrinated, and they're protecting these darn systems. And so they're not, and that's not for the broader good. It's usually just to benefit themselves and their peers in most cases. And I wish people would stop protecting these people. They have so many people And I get it, because I mean, we all accept the world in which we are presented, right? And for many years, these systems and institutions did seemingly work. But certainly since the great financial crisis, certainly over the last 30 or 40 years, and this is why I give boomers such a hard time, is these things have become corrupted. And we've kind of just accepted it, normalized it, you know. And it's funny when I hear people today, you know, trying to attach these 20th and, you know, these 19th and 20th century concepts to it. Oh, it's capitalism's fault. Oh, it's, no, we need socialism, we need communism. I mean, these are so outmoded right now. You know, none of that matters, because right now we have institutional corruption. We have people who are indoctrinated, who are acting, whose systems have them acting stupidly. We don't have people with good solutions making it to the top right now. You know what I mean? What we have most of all, are sellouts and people who are actively, you know, protecting and preserving these institutionally corrupt systems. And then we have their supporters. Oh, you know, the people who will get Anthony Fauci tattooed to their leg or something like that. You know, then that's the sycophant side of these people. But we actually have these types of people, and that are actively supporting the institutionally corrupt among us. They're cheerleading the institutional corruption. It's amazing to me. You know what I mean? And, you know, the sooner people understand what we are experiencing is massive institutional corruption, the sooner we can actually start to find solutions to this stuff. But until people understand that that is actually the label, that's the thing that we're dealing with, you know, which means in a lot of cases we kind of have to burn it all down and start anew, you know what I mean? Because, you know, if we keep the same people in power, you know, I've been working in defense acquisition, or actually federal acquisition, for a while, and that is a industry that is very, it really doesn't want to change. It has a system where, you know, 5 defense contractors make the lion's share of the money. You know, everybody, you know, does their 20 or 30 years in government and then works for one of them. You know, there's this whole, it's a sort of a nepotism type system, and it's so inward looking, you know, and you know, it's a very corrupt system, as far as I've been able to tell, and most efforts go to protecting and preserving the system. You know, they have had every chance. They have all the data showing how badly the system performs, and they've had every chance to innovate, to reform, and they refuse to do so. And they basically, oh, it's crazy. I don't even want to go into it, because I could go into it for a very, very long time, because it was for me, it's just been a great disappointment to see so many smart people that could be doing really wonderful things for our society not do them, just bend over for the system. They just always protect the system. The system is the only thing that matters. The warfighter doesn't matter. The taxpayer doesn't matter. Small industries and companies and organizations don't matter. They'll pay lip service, and there's a lot of lip service in DC. That's one of the things I've learned over the years, is that the people who make it to the top in DC are the sellouts, 100%, are the sellouts, and those who are willing to protect and preserve the system while saying they're doing the opposite. If you can use it's a really, I mean, there are definitely, I mean, inside the Beltway, for those who don't know, it's game playing, but you have to sell your soul. You have to sell your soul to really do well inside the Beltway. And that goes for the politicians and the government bureaucrats. You have to, and a lot of the contractors and consultants. You have to believe the propaganda. You have to believe the hive mind. You can't go against anything. You know what I mean? And I mean, that's how we get so many people who are otherwise good people participating in very immoral systems, right? And the sad part, you know, and that's why so many people are called Beltway bandits. Because bandits are people who exploit and use systems to benefit themselves at the expense of others, right? Stupid people, you know, they do things that don't benefit themselves, possibly harm themselves, while also harming or not benefiting other people. So it's negative, negative. You know, the bandits at least are, you know, benefiting themselves. But so those are the two ways that I sort of understand the world today, through the lens of institutional corruption and, quite frankly, the stupidity. I mean, you cannot overestimate how many stupid people there are. And and that's divorced from IQ or any other appearance about those people. It's people who are, yeah, I mean, who constantly engage in behaviors, activities, thoughts, ideas that don't benefit themselves and don't benefit anybody else. So, I mean, think of how many ideologies today that people subscribe to that don't really benefit themselves or anybody else, yet they live their entire lives subsumed by these thoughts and ideas, you know. I think I used that word wrong. Anyway, it's just, you know, you kind of see that the world's cracking up these days. You know, so you've got institutional corruption, you have stupidity. The last one I mentioned here today was, of course, irresponsible monetary and fiscal policy, which has been pretty much the sole culprit when it comes to wealth inequality today. I mean, it's not capitalism, it's not socialism. You know, it's closer to socialism and communism than it is capitalism. Oh, but it's late stage capitalism. I love it when people use that term, because what are they talking about? They're talking about institutional corruption. They just don't know it. In fact, if you tune in to what's going on, everybody's talking about institutional corruption. They just don't know what they're talking. They don't conceptually understand what institutional corruption is. Institutional corruption is probably the main problem going on in the United States right now. But we haven't labeled it. Nobody's, you know. And I tell you, I'm going to go back to the stupid one more time. And here's one of the things that I did not realize, and I think I underappreciated for many years. And that is, a lot of people just believe what they're told. They just let the world wash over them. They just get in they're more focused on their day-to-day little dramas and trivialities, right? They're looking inward again. I mean, not looking inward like in a depth way. They're just looking at their belly button, meaning they don't see much beyond their own lives. So they just passively accept what they're being told. And they, of course, they identify with in-groups, and so they might be a leftist or a right person, but they're not thinking about any of this stuff. They're not thinking. These aren't their ideas. They're just, most people, and that's another concept that is worth understanding, is most people, many of their behaviors is done performatively just for in-group affirmation. I mean, go on social media. How many people do you know are doing performative things just for likes, just for a little tiny things? How many people do you know post political stuff and blah, 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 just for in-group affirmation? You can't underestimate that, but I see that also. I mean, that is sort of banditry if you think of likes as somehow benefiting the person, but it really doesn't, you know. So it's somewhere across between being a bandit and being stupid, right? Most of our, I don't know, a lot of what I see on social media seems to be that. So how do you make sense of things? How do you make sense of the world? I'd really like to know how other people, because I believe in the concept of razors, meaning like you find a simple concept that helps you explain things, that so when you see it, you go, oh, I know what that is. What kind of razors do you have? I'd like to know. I'd really like to know how other people make sense of the world, as it's going crazy. I mean, there's a good chance that we are at end of empire here. We are in the crack-up phase, and, chances are things are going to get weirder and weirder and weirder. Things are going to get more divisive. I mean, we're all being manipulated at this point at extreme levels by algorithms and AI and well-moneyed lobbyists and narratives and media groups and all sorts of things. We are just being, and I actually don't think we as humans, developed evolution, developed so that we could defend against this stuff. I think we are woefully, we woefully lack the capabilities of making sense of the world in a tornado of misinformation, propaganda, and lies, which we currently have. And, anyway, let me know. I'd really like to know. I'd really like to hear from other people who are thinking out there or not thinking. You can tell me I'm a stupid idiot. That's fine too. I get a lot of that too. You don't know nothing, man. What they say, what the news media tells me, what they say on the front page of Google News, that's the right thing. Forget you. I get, actually, I don't get a lot of pushback these days because the reason is I think a lot of people don't think. And when they see somebody who does think, and somebody who actually has done the work to sort of to conceptualize and understand things, I don't think they really understand that a lot of times. Like a lot of people think that, because if you go on X or anything, people are clearly just spouting stuff that they're completely ignorant of, right? But I hope to not just spout stuff that I'm ignorant of, because, I have bothered to understand what institutional corruption is. I have bothered to understand what makes somebody stupid. I have bothered to understand how monetary and fiscal policy has created the largest wealth inequality gap of all freaking human history, and how dumb people are actually being cajoled into thinking that it has something to do with capitalism, socialism, or communism. And they're missing the thing that's right in front of their face. But I don't know, what do you think? Do you think we are heading into a more equal, beautiful world filled with utopia if we just get rid of, Donald Trump? Jesus. Anyway, I'm just splouting on these days because I think there's people who think they know the answers. That because they've heard other smart people, they know. But, all smart people know that whatever they know, they may not know. And what do I mean by that? That sounds a little cryptic. Meaning, they're willing to accept that they're wrong. At any one time, I could easily accept that I'm wrong with just about anything if somebody can show me how I'm wrong. I will concede it instantly. Instantly. If somebody can show me. And this is one of the things that, and since we've lost the ability to have true conversation and civil debate in society, it's one of the things I do miss. We used to be able to debate. But today, I find this to be largely guilty of one side of the political spectrum. You actually use reason, critical thinking, those types of things, they just start to call you names. real quick. Oh, no, you're thinking for yourself. you must be a fascist, a conspiracy theory person. You're bad. It's like, no, I actually, do you want to talk about it? No, I gotta call you names. And, the left has gotta stop it with this hate shit. The left has gotta stop it with this righteous hate. We perceive that you guys are haters, but you're not. I'm so sick of this race crap. I live in the South now. For 11 years, I have yet to see anything that even remotely resembles anything racist. Anything. Not like when I lived in ultra-left Baltimore, where I saw plenty of racism going on. Especially coming out of the black communities. But, this race, this sex stuff, this sex and gender and race shit, which, I don't think this country has actually ever been more tolerant in its history. But they're trying to, they keep turning the screws, they keep turning the things, they're trying to start stuff up because, the stupid people are gonna fall for this crap because it's one of the keys of propaganda, right, is to make this something very, very simple and just keep repeating it. Simple and repeating. They're racist, fascist, fascist, fascist. Most people who are using the word fascist don't even know what fascism is. The people who are saying, oh, you have to give your child 50 vaccines by the time they're 18 or whatever it is, don't even know how vaccines work. They're just trusting that other people know what they're doing. And you know what? That is important. That's important in a complex society, that we do have people who are, we can't all think about everything. It's true. So there has to be experts. There has to be people who are trustworthy in positions so that we can just say, they've got it. The doctors have it. These people have it. They have it. And that's what's so insidious about institutional corruption, is that we can no longer trust these things. And indeed, in many cases, they truly are no longer trustworthy. That's why we need to root out institutional corruption. It needs to be a priority to understand it, to recognize it, and to get rid of it when it occurs. To be judicious about it and get rid of it. Because we are now awash in it, and we're driving ourselves crazy in order to justify it instead of seeing it as the problem and then figuring out solutions. But right now, the people who are in control of the systems are controlling you most likely, me most likely, and we're not acknowledging that. And that's so frustrating, really, really frustrating. That, but I know that we can do it, but people have to sort of people have to understand that the systems have become corrupted. And it's hard because a lot of people have been a part of these systems. The boomers actively benefited from these systems. They don't want to admit that these systems have harmed the nation, have harmed this country, have harmed people. They want to see, nobody wants to admit that they might be the bad guys, right? But the sooner that we do, the sooner we can solve these things. So anyway, I hope I said something meaningful today. Thank you for coming along on this walk. I really do appreciate it. And because I need to get this stuff out. And a lot of times it just comes out as, just a big old word vomit mess. But I hope you see that there is some reasoning behind this stuff. And I appreciate you. Peace.